On paper, the Infiniti Q50 Red Sport looks amazing. It's got way more horsepower than the BMW 340i and costs less, it's rear-wheel drive, and even the things we didn't like about it last time, the steering and the suspension, apparently have been improved. But then again, I look amazing on paper as well. The reality is quite different. So the only way to tell is to drive it. The Q50 is Infiniti's mid-sized four-door saloon, and the Red Sport would like to think of itself as the rival to BMW's 340i, but really, the Lexus IS350 is what it's really up against. The latest update has brought new looks to the entire Q50 range. The base spec GT and the mid-grade Sport Premium were restyled at the front and back and given new alloy wheels. The Red Sport had its face and rear end restyled too, but Infiniti went further with the updates on this grade with red brake calipers, new LED taillights and introduced a new colour. This one, it's called Dynamic Sunstone Red. It's a good looking beast, with a tough stance. I like the aggro body kit from the front splitter to that boot lid spoiler, but no matter how much I look at that grille, I don't find it attractive. The Q60 Red Sport's cabin has been updated with a new steering wheel, a new gear shifter, and it now has fancy red stitching on the seats and also on the dashboard just there. Oh, these seats are also quilted leather now too. They're very nice, very supportive, very comfortable. One of the things they have not changed is this dual screen setup. Now, other brands manage to carry it off really well. There's the Range Rover Velar, not mentioning any names, and they do it perfectly. This doesn't quite look as good. It looks a little bit aftermarket to me, and also the intuitiveness of it is not great. Still get a bit confused with it. Okay, one of the areas we weren't major fans of when the Q50 Red Sport came out in 2016 was the steering. Now, it felt to us a little bit light, a little bit artificial, and that's probably because it is. Now, the steering is called Direct Adaptive Steering, and Infiniti say they have improved upon it. This is, version 2, Mark 2, DAS 2 they call it. So they reckon it's evolved, they reckon it's better, and I think it's pretty good. It's actually much better when you put the car into Sport Plus mode. In regular standard mode, the steering is quite light. It feels like it's sticking at the top dead center. When you put it into Sport Plus mode, it gets a bit heavier, it feels a bit more accurate, it feels a bit more sure of itself. In fact, I spend most of the time in Sport Plus mode because I want that steering to feel like that. Another area that we weren't major fans of, or an area that we felt needed addressing, was the suspension. We felt it was a little bit busy, a little bit jittery, and Infiniti again have said that they've approached that, they've readdressed it, and they've improved it. The dynamic digital suspension, as it's called, it's very clever. Again, just like the steering, it's super clever, probably a bit too clever. In Sport and Sport Plus mode, what it's doing, it's constantly adjusting itself to give you the perfect handling. Well, what they say is perfect handling. Now, the handling does feel good, but now this brings me to one of the issues that Robbo, when he drove the car in 2016, had a problem with. And that was that maybe the chassis just didn't feel like it suited that engine. That twin turbo 3-litre V6 is a massive, beautiful beast. But it might be just a little bit too much for this chassis to handle, he thought. Well, what do we think now? Let me have a think. Yes, no, still not there yet. I'm pretty sure it still feels a little bit hairy. Now, Robbo drove it in less than ideal conditions. He drove it in the wet, soaking wet, torrential rain, and a lot of cars probably would have trouble trying to get the power down, and that was one of his major issues. In weather like that, perhaps that may have been affecting things. But the more I drive this car in ideal conditions, like today, totally dry, and the more I feel it wanting to step out a little bit, the more I feel it losing traction when you push it, and you don't even have to push it too hard. It's a live wire, but I don't think they've intended it to be entirely like that. You drive an M3 or an M4 on these exact same roads and it feels more planted and it feels more sure of itself. This feels slightly sketchy in some ways. I'm not saying it's unsafe, but it just feels a little bit more loose. And I think that's what Robbo was referring to when he said that it had just had trouble trying to get the power down. That's definitely what's happening here. Those wheels are just struggling to get all that power down. I love this engine though. The twin turbo V6, 298 kilowatts, 475 Newton meters. It's a lot. It's you know what? I think, and getting back to what Robbo was talking about, I think it's probably a little bit too much for this car to handle, too much for this chassis to deal with. But still, I love it. I love this engine. That said, the cabin does feel special, just not overly so. I mean, there's a stack of great standard features here, from the 16-speaker Bose sound system, sat-nav and reversing camera to the sunroof, but the quality is just not up on the Benz and Beamer level. The Q50 Red Sport comes armed to the hilt with advanced safety equipment. There's forward and reverse AEB, blind spot warning and lane departure prevention. That car really wants you to like it. Problem is, I think it's trying a little bit too hard. Yes, the steering has been improved. Yes, the suspension's also been improved. But at times, out here, even in ideal conditions, it felt a little bit hairy at times. But maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's what you want. Something that feels like it's a little bit on the edge. Still, that engine is amazing. The interior is beautiful. The outside of the car is beautiful too. And it's pretty good value for money.